Well, hello there. First of all, I would like to thank ITB Berlin for having me as speaker on the disruption of tourism software. I'm Ben Messner with the SIO AG in Frankfurt, Germany. Let me first give you a short overview and introduction before we jump right into this topic that is discussed among many CTOs in the tourism industry that keep wondering why SIO skyrocketed the way we did against all odds in regards to the current global health crisis. Last year, SIO planned its seminal appearance at ITB, and ITB was in turn abruptly canceled, which was certainly not optimal for us and our presentation. We'd been concentrating all of our efforts on the tourism industry for many years in order to revolutionize travel technology by heavily disrupting it. And at the very moment of presenting to the industry, that very industry as a whole seemingly fell apart within a matter of just a few weeks. Of course, we didn't expect a positive 2020 with a false start like this. But as it turned out, 2020 became, by far, the best year in our corporate history. We more than doubled our customers, workforce, and office space, and not a single person in our team had a single second of Kurzarbeit. And to the extreme contrary, we all put in extra hours to cope with the unexpected expansion of our business that drastically accelerated for us in 2021. What happened? The disruption of the entire tourism software concept by us here at SIO AG, which has turned the whole industry upside down. First, I'll explain the concept behind disruption and its origins, and I'll show you some of our own mistakes and the way we created a video in a cave of our sales team as Stone Age people to convey what SIO can do for its customers compared to Stone Age technology. Then, I'll line out some of the paradigms along which SIO disrupted the industry, further diving into technology and travel technology in particular, in order to explain some of its basic concepts. Finally, I'll take a few questions from the audience, so feel free to ask whatever you're interested in. My team will curate all the questions for me during my speech, and we look forward to speaking with you. First of all, what is disruption? The term was coined by the only recently deceased Clayton M. Christensen, a professor at Harvard University that analyzed several industries in order to find out why even, or especially, well-managed companies fail. Taking the example of the hard disk industry, Clayton M. Christensen used an abundance of statistical data to demonstrate that the very reason for failure was rooted in acutely listening to their customers, trying to perfectly fulfill their dreams and turn their wishes into reality as precisely as possible. I use a very simple example to illustrate this as a more concrete example. Henry Ford was asked by his customers to provide horses that are much faster. Had he at first listened to those customers literally, there would be not a Ford Motor Company today. Sometimes customers cannot and do not want to express what they exactly and actually really want because they are not the experts in their field, and not by accident. They deliberately choose not to be the experts in every field, but their own, in their own profession. What Ford's customers actually wanted was a means of commuting faster between two given places. They didn't care if it was on horseback, in a car, or being beamed up by Scotty. Ford could have chosen to become the world's best horse breeder. That's what most companies would do today. They try to please their customers. And to be completely open, there's nothing wrong with that. But there's a danger to it that can be, at times, invisible, and therefore is often neglected. That's what Clayton M. Christensen pointed out in his book, The Innovator's Dilemma. Hard disk manufacturers concentrated on providing more and more space on those hard disks, speeding up the reading and writing access, and delivering on every need their customers had, except for one, the size of the hard disk in terms of actual dimensions. Intrinsically, customers first only use big server machines, then desktop computers, then laptops, and finally smartphones. Nowadays, that trend is very obvious, but back then it was rather counterintuitive to reduce the dimensions of a hard drive that was required to provide more space. What you really want to do is innovate on behalf of your customer and anticipate what is best for his or her situation today, tomorrow, as well as in 10 or in 20 years from now. This can be very painful at times. We had to rewrite our entire software code several times, trashing millions of euros of work we had done up until that point. But it was necessary in order to get to a place where we needed to be and where we are today. We will do it again if we need to, not only when our systems would be close to collapsing, but already when we have evidence of overwhelmingly better concepts, technologies, and solutions in the marketplace today or in the future. Today and since 2016, our code base is extremely stable and we can use it for whatever purpose we can envision. So knock on wood. Even our first code base was superior to almost all solutions there are today in the tourism industry besides SIO. We could have stopped there, but that's not our approach. We wanted to do it the best conceivable way possible, and we're not even there yet, despite being miles ahead of the incumbents that still battle with implementing the computer mouse, only accept keyboard inputs. Definitely not a joke. They're scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms of keyboard shortcuts. They're trying to sell keyboard shortcuts as a feature instead of implementing the computer mouse, while most other industries are already transitioning from the mouse to swiping on smartphones and tablets. Miles ahead. Watching users of that legacy software do their work, or rather work around the many obstacles of their legacy technology, is something between a visit to a technology museum and outright comedy, which would be funny if it weren't so deadly serious and a potential propellant of bankruptcy for those companies that still use that kind of museum technology. They're used to waiting several weeks, even months or years for the implementation of a new API. Sometimes even for just an additional input field. That is, in my opinion, that's insane to wait for something that you need for your business. Last year, we were showing our software to the public for the first time. We were asked to create a short movie that will convey what SIO is all about. Unfortunately, we just had a few days to shoot the video, and we started to get creative. Finally, we had the idea that what we do compares to the difference between trying to light a fire using sticks and stones and other Stone Age tools versus just using a lighter. It turns out that the latter is much easier. So, fast forward to my computer. Lacking the short-term availability of actors, we decided to do it all by ourselves. Johann Fennen, or Hans, how we call him, myself and my girlfriend, we put on some Stone Age costumes and we went out to find a cave around our area. And I'll show you some pictures. So this is our video shoot here. Okay. Ich zeige einfach Fotos. The actual concept was very simple. In the first scene, we tried to get the fire going using sticks and firestones. We didn't succeed, getting more and more angry. The second scene was Niels, our CTO, that appeared in today's clothing coming from the far future and carrying a lighter and providing us with fire. We were thrilled in the last scene as just like our customers are using SIO every day, especially when they look back to their old Firestone concepts and methods from the perspective of their now future. And I'll show you our final result from this video. we certainly had a fun time creating that together as a team. So now I want to go over a few of the paradigms involved with this subject. There's a whole lot more to it than just technology. Even though it's one of the most important components in business today, most other software companies are either delivering software off the shelf, i.e. just copying what others and other users of their software already have in use, and others are individually programming custom software for their users. The latter one being much more flexible and usually much more expensive as well. We built our own framework that enables us to configure We built our own framework that enables us to configure rather than program the actual code, speeding up our development process in a mind-boggling way that even our newly onboarded developers cannot believe. That is until they dive into the SIO system a little deeper. We often do benchmark tests in order to find out where we can still find room for improvement. Using our system, we're about 12 times faster creating entirely customized software solutions compared to using state-of-the-art programming languages, frameworks, and databases alone. In the beginning, most customers cannot believe their eyes when they're requesting to be connected to a new API, whose influence is still to be implemented by SIO. In the beginning, most customers cannot believe their eyes when they're requesting to be connected to a new API whose interface is still to be implemented by SIO. Sometimes a week later, the API is in full use and entirely covered by so-called integration tests. But that's something I learned very quickly. Customers adapt, and today they'd be disappointed by development that would take more than a week or two. That is exactly how things should be. Why accept mediocrity or even Stone Age results when you can have an almost perfect solution instantly? Another paradigm besides technology is deadlines. I don't still get it, but it's the way it is. Customers anticipate, and sometimes even expect deadlines to be missed. We have a very strict policy on deadlines, meaning that we'd only accept missing a deadline if someone missed it by actually being dead. When we tell a customer that something is going to be ready to use by the end of the week, he can bet his whole net worth on it that we're delivering it on time, or even ahead of time. Almost every new SIO customer is left a little puzzled when realizing that there's actually a software company that delivers on time. They're usually everything other than prepared to use the software when we deliver it, because they haven't been trained to anticipate that most deadlines are missed. The next important paradigm is money. Why on this earth is it still possible to put the burden of risk on the customer? He or she is the one seeking help from a professional software company that ought to know what their costs are, what projects cost, and the what's, whys, and hows of software. Failing to correctly assess the price should never be the customer's risk, but solely the one of the software company. Today, that's totally wrong in most cases, but the problem is the incentive system in general. If you pay somebody by the hour, you can bet on him producing as many hours as possible in order to increase his pay. There's nothing wrong with that in a marketplace, but you'll get what you pay for. Hours. One of our founders coined the phrase that in these cases, you often pay the developer to produce an error, and then you pay him again to get rid of that same error all over again. And it ends up being a cycle. That's why today most software projects cost more, take longer, and deliver less than anticipated. But that's not necessary at all. One further paradigm is complexity. Very often, software companies lure their customers into dealing with them by showcasing very small prices. What they do not tell their customers is that those prices are just the tip of a massive iceberg that lies below sea level and can only be discovered after having bought the software. It then becomes especially costly to get rid of the system or to advance it, and they are trapped. This is how these companies earn the bulk of their pay. There's always another module here, some other costly customized development there. There's another tool somewhere else, or a special limitation that will run into your system that you will run into while using it. Once you get more users on your system, for example, once you try to scale your business. What do we do differently? At SIO, we actually use the most efficient technology there is. I'll dive into this in a little bit and go into an explanation about the technology that we use. It's an all-in-one system that you can run your website on, use as a CMS, CRM, HR, accounting, and marketing tool. There's no need for additional software. At SIO, we just have two prices, a one-time setup fee and a monthly fee. That's it. All individual and customized development is included. That's a big risk for us in terms of correctly assessing what a customer needs and will need in the future. But it provides for the right incentive structure. We're incentivized to get things done as perfectly as possible, as fast as possible, because our income is fixed. The faster we are and the less mistakes we make, the more we can earn. Producing errors or missing deadlines will cost us money, not the customer, and that changes the whole setting by a lot. Try to convince your software provider or agency to opt in for such a model in which solely the result is paid for and not the time that is put into creating that said result, or sometimes just trying to create that said result. I'll now dive a little deeper into digitization and our technology and try to explain it. Unfortunately, digitization has become a meaningless buzzword that nowadays can even be attributed to cheese or vegetables. Every piece of technology is marketed under the label of digitization, artificial intelligence, or big data. But in most cases, it's just the label and not the content. Analogous content is marketed in a pseudo-digital packaging that doesn't change its content, but looks nice at first glance. Taking a digital photo of a handwritten letter doesn't make the letter digital. It just creates a digital copy of an analog handwritten letter. Even applying high-end OCR techniques on that letter won't make it digital, even if at least the text could be digitally reproduced in more than just figurative applications. The real magic of digitization happens when computers and systems can understand and process the information that is contained within the letter. When the letter is interpreted and acted upon, when the system understands that this is a birthday letter and starts proposing or even executing complementary paths of action like ordering a bouquet of flowers or a cake, and not just some flowers or cake, but the favorite ones of the recipient ordered also at the best bakery or best florist nearby. Combining all those pieces of information together is an exemplary application of big data. Automated decisions on the actual order of the flowers can be called a simple form of artificial intelligence. This is not science fiction. This is real digitization, and this is where we should be at today. Speaking on behalf of a tech company, I'll take the risk of diving a little deeper into more tech things, despite being anything other than a developer myself. Most incumbent travel technology companies faced a tough 2020, including Kurzarbeit and heavily reduced workloads due to the pandemic. Why did we fare so much better? The main difference is real digitization instead of just labeling legacy technology as such. For people like me, in the beginning, it was tough to separate the wheat from the chaff. And to be honest, I wasn't able to necessarily differentiate between real digitization and plain marketing. But there are simple ways to find out which is which. You don't have to be a developer or a software genius in order to determine if it's just marketing or if it's the real deal. I'll show you in a nutshell, in 5 parts, how you can easily distinguish between the two. First, let's have a look at the very basic components. Databases. Today there's even a software in active use that doesn't yet use SQL systems. It stores data in simple text files or legacy databases from the 80s or even punch cards created in the 50s and 60s, all of which being pre-internet technologies. And I think we can all agree the internet is here to stay. This isn't really state-of-the-art at all, and only cripples even the most sophisticated system when using these types of constructs. Today's systems go beyond SQL databases using so-called NoSQL structures, MongoDB, for example. The main difference between SQL and NoSQL database structures is their architecture, which I'll explain with a very basic concept. Whereas SQL databases are conceived like spreadsheets with the same amount of columns for every row, NoSQL databases can have one column for the first row, 7 for the second, and several hundred or thousand for the third, providing for much more flexible use cases. If it takes more than a split second for your software to add new fields to existing forms, you probably don't use NoSQL databases. If your software doesn't adapt to your exact needs, or if you have a myriad of wizards, tabs, and forms that you don't actually need, or if you're missing the functionalities that would support or streamline your processes and also extend to adapt to your needs, chances are high your software is using one of the old database structures. Second, and to me the easiest litmus test, is does your software need walking aids, or can it walk on its own? Some very old systems need additional software like so-called internet booking engines or the like to be compliant with today's very basic requirements that include online functionality. There are systems, ones that are still being used today, that make use of a printer driver in order to print the data into a modern database like SQL. That's a very extreme case of walking aid, and such crippled system constructs only exist in the travel industry. As far as I know, no other industry still has such systems in active use. Third, connectedness. Can you simply use so-called REST APIs in order to send and receive information from or to your system? Does it take less than a few days to implement new application interfaces, so-called APIs in general? Do APIs work instantaneously without errors from the start? And are there automatic so-called integration tests in place that will test all connected services automatically to make sure that they're always running properly? Your software system, is it updated every week or every 2 weeks automatically? If you said yes, in those cases you're good. Fourth, usability. There are still systems that feel like you're using a very old version of DOS, where the user has to remember certain keyboard shortcuts and push 6 buttons to get where they need to go. There are even systems in active use that do not even implement the computer mouse. In 2021, in most industries, it's tough to imagine that there are systems that cannot yet be controlled using smartphones or apps. In the travel technology, even the computer mouse seems to be a miraculous invention that still seems miles ahead of and way too high-tech for those old legacy systems. This is often underestimated. How in this world can users be forced to work with key-only or keyboard-only legacy systems at their job, when they can even choose a partner, a life partner, while swiping on a phone and having their kids ask them if they found their work equipment in a technical museum or a yard sale. Do people have to perform repetitive tasks, or are those entirely automated? Can your customers and partners log into your system online or via an app? Those are all important questions that you have to ask yourself. Fifth, complexity. How many different software systems do you need to do your job? Do you have to use spreadsheets for statistics, or does your software provide you with all the information that you need right out of the box to do all of the controlling that you need for your company? Ideally, you should use exactly one system and not more for your enterprise resource planning, CRM, newsletters, website, etc. That is, by the way, what SIO stands for, SIO, Software in One. Real digitization is the single biggest and most important challenge that the tourism industry is facing on its way out of the pandemic. This will cause the cream of the crop to rise to the top and will decide which companies will go bankrupt and which will thrive and survive into the future. Today's world is upside down, but this will not last forever. Humans want to explore the world, connect with each other, and travel. It's in our very nature. And at some point, we'll be much more active in travel than even pre-pandemic. But this will happen in 3 phases, of which we are currently in the first. The second phase will start when most of the lockdowns and government measures, as well as government help, will be gone. This will be the toughest period, followed by extreme growth and prosperity in the third. Before the pandemic, I wouldn't have ever imagined that even influencers couldn't post their travel adventures anymore because there's been such widespread travel shaming today. The Spanish flu was followed by the golden 20s, one of the most active, crazy, and fun decades of the last century. I strongly believe that this pandemic as well will be followed by the golden 20s of our century. And I can't wait to welcome those post-pandemic celebrations. Thank you very much for your attention, and let's party together as soon as we come out of this mess on the other side. Take care and see you ASAP in person again. One more thing. Don't forget to try SIO yourself. You'll be surprised. You may just be very excited coming out of our meeting. Just go to SIO.com, that's SIO.com/ITB. There you can easily schedule an appointment with SIO to have a glimpse at the future and what the software can offer for possibilities. Okay, so we've got 3 groups of questions that were summed up for me by my team in the background. Thanks a lot, guys, by the way. So number 1, the first question was asked by the CTO of a big German tour operator, and there are several similar questions. I'll just read it for you so you know what it's all about. Should you rather develop software on your own or use software like SIO? What is your opinion on that, Mr. Messner? So certainly a little biased in advance, but that's a classic make or buy decision. It really depends on your particular situation. If you already have your own solution in place and you're planning on discontinuing your business in the upcoming years, or at least not planning on expanding it, then you should save your money and stick with what you have before dissolving your company, because you'll increase your liquidation value through this. If you're planning on growing your business or to stay in the market, there's just one choice. Don't make, buy. And why? There's an important strategic component to it. Where do you think the best developers will go? Do they want to be hired by a tour operator or by a software company? As a tour operator, even as a big one, you have to pay more to attract the same talent, and it's tough for you to keep highly talented developers attached to you. This has even been a challenge in software companies nowadays. As a tour operator, you'll always face the decision of either advancing your software or your tour operating business. And very naturally, you'll often choose the latter over the first. You'll thereby collect what we call technical debt, that one way or another you'll need to pay for. Most companies never service their technical debt, having amount to an even more uncontrollable mountain, that mountain that will eventually collapse, leaving you with ever-increasing development time for even the smallest of tasks, and finally requiring you to start over from scratch. Another aspect to this is that you'll be in your own bubble. It's hard for you to sell your software to one of your competitors. At least if I were your direct competitor, I wouldn't like using your software. So you're stuck with just one software company, yourself. Every API, every new technology, and all new laws need to be explored and custom developed for you alone, instead of distributing the cost for those efforts among many users. In the end, you'll have a big market disadvantage, because even new entrants in your market will eventually be able to just start with what you have out of the box, and all the effort that you put into creating your own system will be invalidated, because those tools are now standard, what you've spent so long to create. So honestly, there's no make, there's just buy or rent. Or do you want your lawyer to perform some cardiac surgery on you, or your doctor to be representing you in the courtroom? I think not. The second set of questions pertains to our price structure. Several people have asked if we could provide them with a rough price estimation. That's the flip side to our business model. There's no easy or general answer like directing you to a price list or a menu. We don't have price lists or something like that because we're building 100% individualized software systems. So every one of our customers doesn't just have an entirely or extremely customized software system, but also he has an individual price that comes along with that individual system. But what we can provide you is to schedule an appointment with you, analyze your situation, and then come up with an offer that's binding for us, but not for you. Of course, this is all free. We don't charge anything in analyzing your systems and requirements. That's a free service that I highly recommend all of you do and all of you use. You'll get extremely valuable insights within spending some time with us and without spending a dime. I hope I won't regret having said that, but that's a service we provide entirely free of cost. So feel free to call us and set up an appointment. One thing I can tell you is that our prices are easily affordable by all customers we've talked to so far. Of course, we're not the cheapest software provider. It's not our goal. But in most cases, our cost was far below that of old systems that we replaced. Some companies take pride in the only perceived circumstance that they actually pay very little in regards to software. That's not usually true, but most of their cost is shown not necessarily on their balance sheets or income statements because it's hidden. If your employees are to do all their calculation work by counting grains of sand instead of just using a calculator, you have zero calculator-related costs. But being proud of that is it's a little hilarious. Most companies have huge payroll replacements for technology. If there's a new problem, they just keep hiring new people because the process is already in place and it's the easy thing to do. Real value is created if you think about those things before taking action. It's not just the entrepreneur's perspective, also the one of the employee. I don't know anyone who likes to count grains of sand or likes to scrape from the bottom of the barrel in terms of memorizing silly keyboard shortcuts. In today's world, meaningful work is becoming more and more important, and it's getting harder and harder to force human beings into using technology that belongs in a museum, if it is worthy of conservation at all. In the end, it is not the price that is important, it's rather the relation between what you get and what you give, or rather what you give and what you get. While most other systems tend to be rather a liability, SIO is an asset that makes your company thrive, and for the most of our customers, using SIO is among their most important competitive advantages. To answer these questions, just go to sio.com/ITB. We'll be there for you and provide you with your individual quote. The third group of questions can be summed up by, when will I be able to use SIO when I've decided to become a customer right now? How long does it take to implement the system? What does your training look like? How does your training work? I don't want to be a politician here, but there's no general answer. It depends. A small company can be onboarded in a few weeks. Medium-sized companies often take several months, and big corporate structures sometimes even require several years. We promised our first customer in the tourism industry, Haus Exkursion in Munich, the German market leader in trekking, to be ready within a year because we lacked everything in terms of knowledge of the tourism sector at all. We delivered within 7 months, so we beat our deadline by about 3 months. That customer later told us that he didn't think it was possible to deliver on time and that he had internally anticipated that it would take about 2 years instead of the only 1 year that we originally promised. So we surprised a lot of people positively, which is always a nice thing to hear from customers, partners, if you will. The transition was very smooth. The employees used their old system until one Friday in September. We went there over the weekend and did all the last migrations, and on the following Monday, SIO was ready. All data was imported, and also important. And the employees went on with their work in a completely new system. We often experience that trainees or quite young people in an organization that are just there for an internship or apprenticeship are the ones that internally explain SIO to their more experienced colleagues that are more used to memorizing keyboard shortcuts and the like instead of using modern apps and software. SIO is very intuitive, but we provide extensive training and support, and we'll only do the live switch when we see that the organization is ready for it. That's where good planning comes into play. So here again, I'll direct you to sio.com/ITB in order to find out more and get explanations on your particular needs and requirements, also the scope of the project, and talk about the future, where you want to move things. Thanks again for having me to ITB Berlin. I think I'll leave it here because we're running out of time. Don't forget to check out my keynote on the Great Reset this Thursday at 10:15 a.m. on Convention Stage 2. Thanks a lot. Take care. Have a great day and have a successful week here at ITB. Thank you.